heard you call me an angel.
I heard.
Anyway, I'm so happy to have listened to your spiritual thought, Joanne. God bless you. You know, I've been at this business for 44 years, and I have a lot to learn. The other day, talking about sweet speech, I had to, 3 weeks ago, we ordered our LED lights from this company in Wisconsin, and it's holding up our entire job. We paid for it, and so I didn't use sweet speech this last week. But I called this poor person who had to answer the phone. And in fact, what got in my way was my Italian background, my Marine background, and my Jesuit background. And then the very next day, I get this email from them apologizing, and they said the shipment's on its way. It was for our LED fixtures. So from now on, I will use sweet speech. What a beautiful day this is. Thank you for being here. You know I like a crowd, and we've got it. Okay, let's say yes. Well, today we're going to get into this whole idea of relationship, because that's the theme for today. There are a couple other themes, but I decided to focus strictly on relationships. What's so neat about today is that we have an opportunity to look at and consider some reasons why 85% of the human drama operates and functions at such a low emotional, such a low consciousness level that their outpicturing of their activities and their emotions are one of fear, doubt, oppression, debate, and apathy. And we can thank right now the psychiatrist Dr. David Hawkins, who spent 40 years researching this. So we're not just Pizelloizing that. But the vast majority of the people have not only, they do not know the power that they have in spirit. It's untapped, unused, but tragically undiscovered. And so David Hawkins did his 40 years of research and came forward and is helping us today, because what he said was we need to somehow transcend this idea that the physical world has dominion over us, and giving it power, that it's time that we look at and we evaluate our relationships. And that's what this is about, relationship. What is your relationship, Angelo, with the physical world of form? What is the most important relationship we could possibly have? Anybody know what that would be? Shout it out.
God.
Yeah, it's our relationship with the inside, with our inner being, with that power that we have within ourselves. That's the relationship that's important, and that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. We here at the PLC, now we look at this 85% thing, and the vast majority of people who aren't there yet, we don't look at that as a bad thing, do we? We're at the Positive Living Center. It's all good and it's all God. We buy into and we really embrace this idea that everything that's happening to us is a good thing. And so, rather than looking at in this regard as a glass half filled, we look at it as glass 15% filled. And there's so much that we can do by changing our own consciousness that will impact overall the whole planet and the whole universe. So that's what this is all about. And it's kind of interesting that, and when I started thinking about this talk, I get a little bit excited. Pardon me if I'm yelling or screaming. I'm sure some of you will tell me afterwards.
Sweet talk.
I got to thinking about this thing, you know? And I came up with some Pizelloisms here. When I started looking at this idea of this relationship we have with the world of form, what flashed in my mind was some of my own background. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to put a handle on this. I'm going to call it that most of us, and we believe this, that most of us, or some of us, need to travel through in consciousness the valley of the shadow of death. Isn't that interesting? The valley of the shadow of death. In order for us to arrive at a higher level of consciousness. I don't know if we believe that or not, but I got to thinking, what is that? Maybe we need to experience some of this stuff so that it'll push us and drive us into a higher level of consciousness. Because I believe there's an impulse in the universe itself. We're not here to be less than what we should be. There's an impulse in the universe that provides us with opportunities and activities that will drive us and push us out of this relationship that we have with form into a higher level of thinking. So I got to thinking about that, and what came to mind was this idea of quicksand. Quicksand, Angela? Yes. We're all experiencing a quicksand syndrome. When I was in the Marines, we were on this 35-mile hike bivouac. It was pouring rain. Pouring rain. And what happened was, every hour we'd get a 10-minute break where we could just relax. I was so tired that I didn't care. Wasn't going to look for a nice place to relax. I didn't want to spend 1 second wasting time. I just plopped down on where I was. And in some cases, I was in the middle of a pool of water. And oh, thank God. Well, one of the guys in our platoon decided to go look, and Ralph's in the back there so he can relate to some of this stuff. One of the guys thought, well, I'm going to find a better place. So he goes out and he gets off the trail, and he goes out there, and in a few minutes later, I hear screaming, help, help, help. And what happened was he walked into this quicksand-like mud that sucked him down. And he was drowning, and the more he wiggled around and tried to get out, the deeper he sunk. And he was yelling and screaming, so what do? We threw him a lifeline, and we pulled him out. Now this is a metaphor. Because what happens is, when we're young, even at the age of maybe 16 or 17, what happens? The corporations and the banks, they want to give us a credit card. Yeah, and so all of a sudden our relationship begins with this credit card. All of a sudden, I'm going to start a relationship with the stuff I can buy on my credit card. And so we get sucked into that quicksand area, and we start drowning in it. And the more we get into it, we need to have, a different job. So I can raise more money, so I can have more credit cards, or more credit. And so, we need a new house, and so we get into this addictive behavior, and our relationship takes priority over our minds. How many of you have been, no, you don't have to raise your hands. How many of you have been there and done that? Okay, so what's this all about? Yeah, what's about is that when we're into that syndrome of relationship with the outer energies, we all of a sudden build our emotional house on sand. That's what it's all about. On attitudes, on the economy, on our jobs. And then we think, oh gosh, I'm going to be happy if I get a new house, or if I get a new relationship. And we get into this addictive behavior that separates us from the truth of who we are. Our relationship just destroys us. And we get into the part where we have to come to the PLC, and this is why we've got crowds. Because they want to know the truth of our beingness. And it's pretty awesome. I move ahead fast and I forget what I really want to say. But what this is all about is that we need to, this month, reevaluate the relationship we have. That's the most important relationship we have. And give ourselves time to focus on that. Because our happiness does not come from the exterior, it comes from within ourselves. There's a story that we can use as a metaphor, and I love this story. It's about a guy named Charles Plumb. How many of you know about Charles Plumb? Good, I'm glad you don't know about Charles Plumb. Charles Plumb is going to his story, and what happened was he takes his story all over the planet here, telling people about it. And what his story is all about, he was a fighter pilot, and I love that because, that's what I'm attracted to. He was not the fighting part, but the pilot. He was a fighter pilot in the Vietnam War. He flew 75 missions. And he was shot down after 75 missions, and he was captured, and he spent 6 years in a prison camp in Vietnam. So when he survived, and when he got out, he decided to take his story worldwide. Well, what happened was he's in a restaurant with his wife one day, and this guy comes up to him and says, "Hey, you're Charles Plumb." He said, "You were flying jets during the Vietnam War, and off the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk, and you were shot down." And Plumb looked at this guy and said, "My God, how do you know about that? What's going on here?" He said, "Because I packed your parachute." See where I'm going? I packed your parachute. And he said, and I guess it worked. And they shook hands. That night, Charles couldn't sleep at night. And this is an accounting of relationships where he couldn't sleep at night because he didn't even know who this guy was. He didn't know what this guy looked like in a Navy uniform. He was wondering how many times have I walked by this guy and didn't even acknowledge him because I'm a pilot and he's a Navy Swabby or whatever they call him. He said, how many times did I really think about the amount of hours he spent in the bow of the ship, weaving these shrouds and folding the silk and preparing this item, which is a parachute, in which our life depends on that. He holds in his hand my life, and I didn't acknowledge him. And then what he does, when Charles was on the circuit, he looks at the audience, as I am too, because I thought about this morning, who packed your parachute? Because what he said was that all of us need a parachute. We need emotional parachutes. We need support. We need spiritual parachutes. Who packed our parachutes? So that's what this is about. Who packed our parachutes? Now here's the big problem that I arrived at this morning, is that fact we're so much involved with the physical. And all of our time is spent in the physical. And it becomes, we start even believing that this stuff that we're accumulating brings us happiness and brings us prosperity. And so we're so disconnected with the spiritual that we really, in consciousness, come up with the idea that this stuff provides my happiness, provides my abundance, provides everything that I need. And so we're so disconnected. And then at some point we need that lifeline. We need to say, hey, this is not working for me. I need to develop a different relationship. And the relationship I need to develop is knowing where, because my parachute was not packed by stuff. It has no power over me. My parachute is packed within myself, in my heart itself. You see? Are we there so far? We're doing okay, huh? Okay, we're okay. Well, I think when we do that, we need to find out, okay, is this all foo-foo stuff? How do I do that? Well, an ancient philosopher, and I think it was Plotinus, I couldn't remember if it was Plato or Plotinus, but we say Plotinus, at 300 AD, came up with a clue of what we need to do to make that transition from so much time in the physical to the spiritual. And what he said was, it's a statement that we all know. When you cease to be finite, you become one with the infinite. What the heck does that mean? When I cease to be finite, I become one with the infinite. What does that mean? And I'll tell you one thing, what I discovered early on is that when I embody that, when I make it part of my cellular, all the cells within my body believes in it, and I live it and work it, then my life changes and I become the powerhouse that I really should be, regardless of circumstances. And so when I cease to be finite, I become one with the infinite. And what does that mean to us? Well, I wrote it down here, what it really means. We cease acting and believing and thinking that we're only a body. Pretty simple. We can do that. When we cease believing that the